Hello, children. I hope you've had a good week. Can't believe it's Friday again. How are the bubbles going at school? I hope you're enjoying being in those. And also, those at home with homeschooling, I hope that's going okay as well. Weekend to look forward to anyway. Well, today we're going to carry on with our story about Jacob. But before we do that, we're going to play a little game. This is a boy's name game. Uh, so you can either play it at the end or now if you want to play it in a minute, pause after I've given you the instructions. So basically, you with the people that you sat with watching this, you each have to pick a boy's name, and you say a boy's name, and then the next person says another boy's name, and then the person after that another boy's name. It mustn't be the same name. So I've got Tom, Freddie, and Marshall with me. So Tom said Freddie's name, and Freddie said Tom's name, and then Marshall, he said Abraham because he remembered from one of the stories we've been having, and that's good if you've been watching the stories. See if you can use the Bible names that we've been using. Anyway, so pause the video now if you'd like to do that, and then if you say the same name that's already been said, you're out. Okay? Right now then. So a quick review, that means a recap, thinking of what we've done. We've been learning about God's promises all year. Now, before Christmas, we learned about God's promises in the New Testament, and now we've been learning about God's promises to Abraham and to Isaac and now to Jacob. So, can you remember what 3 promises God made to Abraham? If you remember, Abraham and Sarah, his wife, didn't have any children, did they, of their own? And they were elderly. But what did God promise them? Let's have a look at the slide, the picture. Yes, God promised them descendants. That was children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren, great-great-great-grandchildren even. So, but God gave them the son Isaac in their old age. And what else did God promise them? Let's look at the next slide. God promised them land, their own land, which will be a lovely green, lush land with plenty of water and grass and so on, and trees, and it would be lovely flowers. And God also, in the next picture, promised them blessing. They were the 3 things, weren't they? Did you pick them up yourself? God's blessing is something extra that God gives to people to help them to do well. And God gave those promises to Isaac as well. And last week we heard how God gave them to Jacob. And in the next slide we see that blessing, land, and descendants again. So it's being passed down. Now we also learned Psalm 12 verse 6 last week. The promises of the Lord can be trusted, because we've been seeing how these promises are beginning to come to pass. However, descendants, God promised Abraham that they would be like stars in the night sky, and to Jacob that they would be like the grains of sand on the beach, on the seashore. Where are we up to? I don't think we're quite there yet, are we? We're up to having Isaac and Rebecca and Jacob and Esau. Well, if you remember, Jacob had to flee. That means he had to suddenly leave home because of how he tricked Esau, and Esau had realized that he'd been done out of the family fortune, basically, and his father's blessing. And so Esau had been done out of that, so he was really angry, and his mum had overheard him saying that he was going to kill Jacob because he was so angry about it. So she sent him off to her brother, his uncle Laban, many, many miles away, where she thought he could stay until it was safe to come home, and then he'd come home again when he thought he cooled down a bit and wasn't so angry. So in the story today, we meet Jacob where he's just left his uncle Laban, but he's married and he's got children. In fact, he's got sons. Now, how many sons do you think Jacob has got? 2, 4, 6 even, 8, 10, no, 12 he had. 12, that's 10 and 2, 12. And as we see from the next picture, or we can see from this, he had 11 at the moment, but he went on to have 12. 12 sons. Now, can you imagine if when they grew up, they had married and had children? You begin to see how what God promised was coming to be. Because we know God always keeps his promises, doesn't he? Anyway, so we meet Jacob again with all his family and his children, and we meet him when he's left his uncle Laban and he's been told by God to go back to his fathers, to Isaac, way. But as you can see from this map, he had to pass through the land of Edom, and that's where his brother Esau was now living. And he was very worried about going with his family through the land where Esau was. How would he be received if he met Esau? Would God keep him safe as he went through there? And he prayed to God, and he said to God, I'm frightened, basically. He said, I've not deserved your kindness and your faithfulness, but you want me to go through here. I pray that you'll keep me safe. Basically, he reminded God really of the promises that he made, that he promised to give him the descendants and so on, although he knew that he didn't deserve the blessing that God had given him through the children and through his animals and everything that he had. And he asked for God's help. So the next thing is he decides to send 2 messengers when they got nearer to Edom. He decides to send 2 messengers to find out what the situation, what Esau is thinking, really, to see, is he friendly or is he wanting to come up for a fight? So he waits till these 2 messengers have come back, and they did in fact see Esau, and they in the next picture we see first of all we see them going, and then we see them coming back, and they're talking with Jacob, and they're reporting back that Esau is coming out to meet Jacob with 400 men. Well, what do you think? Do you think that Jacob said, oh, well, that's okay. Here he is, Jacob, with his family and children and everything, and his animals, just going along, and there Esau is coming with 400 men towards him. So he naturally thought that he was up for a fight. And so he was frightened, very scared, Jacob. And so he wondered what was best to do. So he decided to split the family into two groups so that if these Esau and his men attacked one group, that the other group would at least be kept safe. And he did the same with the animals, and he put the animals in front and so on and separated them out to give them more time to see what Esau and his men were going to do. And Jacob, just before he was going to meet up with Esau, he prayed to God again. And again, he reminded God of the fact that he kind of got him into this situation, and that he also reminded him what he had promised him. And he also was quite humble, we say, in attitude. To God, he recognized God's faithfulness and his kindness to him, even though he didn't deserve it. And he thanked God for that, and he asked him to get him through safely and his family this situation. So the next thing is, I think God must have put it into his mind. He decides to send a gift. Well, you or I would send maybe a toy, wouldn't we, or something that we thought, another gift that the people we were giving to we thought would like, and we'd wrap it up and maybe put a bow on. But in those days they didn't do that. What they did was they did it by animals. So as Jacob had quite a lot of animals, he sent gifts of animals. But you know how many goats he sent? 220. And 220 sheep. And not only that, 30 camels. And some cows as well. And some donkeys. And Jacob got the men to take them up bit by bit to try and smooth things over with Esau. Anyway, in the next picture, we see the men talking to Esau, and he says, where have you come from, and whose are these, and so on. And he said, well, we're with Jacob, your brother, and he wants you to have these as a gift. And Esau said, well, I've got plenty, I don't need these. Anyway, the next thing, Jacob gets there, and he gets off his camel, and he bows down low, as you can see from the picture. And in those days, it was a sign of respect that you bow down low. I mean, we might curtsy or bow to the king or queen, queen in our case, isn't it? Or we might just shake hands or whatever. We can't do that at the moment with COVID, but we'd show respect. And those days it was bowing. Anyway, so he did that, and then Esau got off his camel and he came over and put his arm round Jacob and gave him a hug and a kiss, and they were the best of buddies. They were friends, long lost friends. And I think Jacob could hardly believe what was happening. Anyway, he insisted that Esau kept the gifts, and so Esau did. And so Esau said, well, are you coming back to my house? And Jacob said, oh yes, we'll come. But he said, you'll be a lot quicker than us because you've got 400 able men, whereas we've got family and young children and lambs and things, and if I push them too hard, the lambs might die. So we'll make our own way. Anyway, so they say goodbye and they set off, but Jacob changes his mind, and he goes, as you can see from the next picture, he goes to a place called Succoth, and he sets up home there for a while, and then he goes to Shechem, and in Shechem, God told him to go to Bethel, as he wanted Jacob to live there. Do you think Jacob obeyed? Yes, he did. And he and his family went, and he's in the next picture you can see that he went to Bethel, and he made an altar, That is a special table to God, to worship God. And he thanked God for getting him through this difficult situation. And he and his family, because God had done that really for them, they had seen that God was faithful and he kept his promises. And so they all decided from then on that they were going to follow God and not any other thing. And I think that pleased God. I'm sure it did. And God said to Jacob, "You're going to be called Israel from now on. You're not going to be called Jacob." And then God made more promises to Jacob, and he said to him that he, out of his descendants, would come some kings. Well, that's quite special, isn't it? Imagine when you grow up, one of your family becoming a king or a queen. So that was special. And God promised them that they would become a nation. So not just descendants, but a whole nation. And that they would in fact become a community of nations. That's several, a group of nations together. So again, very special. So God blesses us when we don't deserve it sometimes, doesn't he? So what about us? Well, just like Jacob, we get scared sometimes, and it's good to know that we can go to God in prayer. We don't have to wait to be scared, though, or troubled by something. It's good to pray and thank God for things too, good things that have happened. It's like talking to God, just like you talk to your friends. Although we do have to remember that God's a bit more special, really, than our friends. So we have to show respect as well. Now then, Jacob had changed, hadn't he? What was he like at the beginning? He tricked, he lied, he deceived. And now he's obeying God and following God. So God has changed him. And God can change us too, whatever we're like. Now then, in the Old Testament, God made some promises about sending a rescuer. And we're going to hear more about that next week. So look forward to seeing you next. Well, I won't see you, but one of the others will. See you next week. It's Carolyn next week. So let's have our prayer drill. 1, 2, head bowed, 3. Dear God, we thank you that you are kind. We thank you that you are faithful and that you stick to what you say and you keep your promises. Thank you that we can trust you. Thank you that you can change people. Just like you changed Jacob, you can change us. And we pray that you would help us to understand you more and love you more. Amen. Now then, what about craft? Well, craft, as you can see, I think from the next picture, is this. That's it completed, as you can see. All the sons of Jacob are there, and I've tried to colour them in neatly. And then the number 12. So you begin with this. Colour in first, cut the dashed lines right across so the numbers can then be threaded through this bit here. The instructions and the print off are at the end anyway for downloading. So have fun with that. Now before we go, we have been doing promises, and remember we like to put into practice a promise that we make. So will you promise this week? We've been learning that God was kind to Jacob, although he didn't deserve it. So let's see if we can be kind each day to someone and see how we get on with that. Okay, till next week. Take care and we'll see you soon. Bye.